Hi, this is Dr. Arlen Myers. I'm President and CEO of the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, and welcome to another session of SOAP Video. This is the second of a three-part series on how to get your medtech idea to patients, and we're pleased and honored to have Brian Doty as our expert. Last week, we discussed the landscape of medtech and how things are changing, and introduce the concept of having a scoring system to score your idea and vet it to see whether it's something that you should move forward with or reevaluate. If you're interested in seeing that video, it's posted on SOAP Video. I put it in the chat, and if you subscribe to SOAP Video, you'll be able to see that and other videos that we've made over the past years, actually. So today, in part two, we're going to talk about how to find money for your idea and development funding models. So Brian, welcome back.
Great to be here. Thank you, Arlen.
Sure. So finding money for an idea is always a popular topic. And of course, there's lots of different ways to do it, and planning and new ideas and specs and private equity and da-da-da-da-da-da. So we're looking forward to your presentation. So how do you find money for your medtech idea?
Well, I'll tell you, it can be very challenging, but it's also very rewarding when you see your program go forward. So I've prepared for us a few slides to go through that just to focus the conversation, and I'm going to answer that question the best way I know how.
Okay, great.
So I'll share the screen now.
Okay.
And do you see that?
Yep. Looks
okay,
good.
Great. All right. So as Dr. Myers was just saying, you see that okay? Just
I'm getting black there. I think you need to go back to,
how about that?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, great. So as Dr. Myers was saying last week, we went over two parts of a six-part program. And just by way of introduction, for anyone's new to this particular series, is I'm Brian Doty, and I started off at large companies, including Johnson & Johnson and Medtronic. And then I had three straight startups, three straight idea to patient successes. Two of these are public companies today, and one of them is now owned by Boston Scientific. So that's where I got my experience, not at the big companies, although I was in business development there, so I understood how they thought. But really what we're talking about today, how to fund your project and how to get it developed in as short a time as possible with the shortest spend, but really high quality. It's mainly coming from my startup experience. So when I had my last exit, I started up this group, Delta Force Group. And what we do is help people that have an idea or they're in process of building their idea, and we help them get it all the way through to the patient and or exit. So our system is four parts. The first part is the vetting or scoring. Dr. Myers mentioned it just a second ago. It's critical, I believe, before you start to vet or score. And I think it's critical every step of your development to still vet it and score it, see if everything is still true. And for SOAP members or YouTube subscribers to the SOAP channel, that video is posted up and running now. Today, we're going to do funding and product development, and then we'll talk next week about product commercialization and exit. Okay, so here we are today. I called this one How to Be Effective with Each Source of Funding. Who are they? How do they make decisions? And then there are 5 ways you can develop your program, your project, once you have funding. And we're going to talk about each of those. So last time, just really quick, we talked a little bit in the video that you'll see. We talked about how much it's changed, the landscape, how it used to work if you had an idea, and how you marched through the steps and got it to the patient. And then we talked about how it works today. And how it works today, you should really consider running a 4-step process like this one. So the thing we always say, and Dr. Myers and I were just talking about it again today, is it's really important that you stop wherever you are and do this scoring. Can't advise that strong enough. All right. And it basically just tells you when you score it, it tells you basically what is your commercial value, what is your clinical value. And believe it or not, that scoring doesn't just give you a yes, no, should you go forward. It also informs today's subject. How you score informs I believe, your best funding source, and how you score informs the way you ought to consider developing your project. So the scoring, just to remind everyone, is that you have to get your inputs from these stakeholders. The answers to your scoring, the answers to your test come from these people. And the most common mistake is to skip one or more of them because you're so excited about your idea. It's more work to do this, get feedback from them, i.e. score your idea, but it pays dividends big time. So we talked about this last week. You can see it again, as I just one more time want to tell you in the video section. So here we are for funding. So we did our scoring, and now it's going to point to us to the sources of funding and how to win that funding. So here we are with the main topic for today. First, let's talk about the sources. First and foremost is your own money. I don't think I've ever done a project with anyone that didn't have some of their own money in the program. And it's really important for a couple of reasons. One, if you start off with your own money, you can start whenever you want. Two, other sources of funding want to know how much skin do you have in the game. So they really want to know how much do you believe in your idea? How much do you believe that you're going to make a difference and get this into a patient and do good for the patient? So how much money you put in, I don't know if it matters that much, but they really want to know that you've got some of your money in. So obviously that's a source. And now we'll go on to the next one. Friends and family. By the way, after I show you these sources, I'm going to prioritize them for you. Friends and family is just what it says. You go to your friends, people that you maybe know in medicine, people that you might know in your engineering career, whoever, and your family who believes in you and believes in your idea and wants to see you get started. Benefits of that are obvious. You can also get the money pretty quick. The downsides of this are, me personally, I don't do it. Why? Because the downsides, and here's what they are. It's just if it doesn't happen fast enough, if the close or the exit isn't big enough, man, it's just, that's all you talk about when you get together at Thanksgiving or you see each other in your daily life. It's like it always comes up. So to me, I personally keep it arm's length, but it's very, very common that you do your own money, then you go get some friends and family money. Angel funds. So these angel networks, they've been the start of probably more medical device, medtech innovations than you could even count. If we didn't have angels, many projects would never get off the ground. But there's some problems with them as well. And here's what I would say they are. When you participate in an angel fund, most of the time, when a proposition is made to the group, you can opt in or you can opt out. Most angel groups, you don't have to invest. It's not a real fund where you put your money in and the fund directors invest it. So it's really difficult, and you can spend a lot of time pitching to angels. I'll show you how to be effective there. They're still around, but I'll tell you what, they're tired. It's, in my experience, angels are the reason most of these companies make it, and they are also remunerated the lowest. They've been diluted so many times by the time your product gets to a patient that a lot of times angels are like, you know, is it really worth it? I know most people that I know that are angels and angel groups, they're interested because they're passionate about it. They are interested to help if they can help you and your idea, but it's not really a big money maker usually for the angels. So it's just a comment. I'm giving you this the street level. This is what the options are. And I'll talk more about them. So just let me get through them and we'll touch how to prioritize. So IDNs, integrated delivery networks. You remember back in the day, you would go to the hospital purchasing and see if they wanted to buy your device because the doctor's asking for it. And then pretty soon there was something called group purchasing organizations. And that's where hospitals banded together to say, hey, how much stronger is our buying power if we band together? So they made GPOs or group purchasing organizations. Now what we have is integrated delivery networks. These are companies like Ascension, HCA, where they literally own hundreds and in some cases thousands of hospitals and clinics. And so it's very important that you understand what your IDN is looking for, what they're going to accept or not. It's part of the scoring we talked about last week. The reason it's showing up today is most of these IDNs have a venture component. And that venture component exists for really one reason, although there's a second reason tucked in there. Here's the first reason. IDNs publicize that they want to invest in your idea if they can put it in their health system which, as I mentioned, could be hundreds or thousands of hospitals. And if it will help them, if it will help them get better outcomes, if it will help them reduce risk, if it will help them cut costs. So the mission of most of the IDN venture arms is that they want to fund projects that they can bring into their system. The tucked under piece of it is, it's also nice if they make money doing it. So IDNs are a definite source. Every one of them that I work with has a venture arm. High net worth individuals. So this is really an exciting one. I know people that have done 4, 5, 6 startups, all with 1 or 2 investors. They found their person. Usually it's a high net worth individual. Usually it's someone that's really passionate about the particular space of medicine that you're working in, and then they fund them. So that one we'll come back to in a minute because it's one of the highest priorities. Similar, but not exactly the same, are family offices. So family offices right now are one of the hottest things in funding ideas like you might have as a member of SOAP. Family office is just what it implies. A family has made significant wealth and they hire professional managers to manage that wealth and invest it appropriately. And I'll talk about how to be successful with them. But it's different than just a high net worth individual. High net worth individual, the ones I've worked with in the past, they're like, hey, we believe in you. I'm passionate about that particular space. I'll invest. Family offices, I want to just point out one more time the difference. They have professional managers and analysts that are going to look at you very much like a venture capitalist would. A private equity fund is like the fund that we started. So the reason we started a private equity fund is we do this scoring and create the roadmap of success for lots of projects. And it's frustrating to us when we can't get funding to move them forward. So we created a private equity fund. Just a couple more of these and then we'll prioritize them and stop for questions. Venture capital. Venture capital in my 3 startups, that's where all of the money came from after we exhausted our angels. In all 3 of my startups, we went to angels first, got our initial money, and then we went to venture capital. The problem with venture capital right now is that they are largely out of the medical device space. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. Strategics. So we call a strategic a big medical device company that you maybe have as part of your planned exit. You want to be acquired. And it's still very true that large medical device companies have an investment arm. And we'll talk about that in just a minute as well. Grants, very important. This is non-dilutive funding. And whether it's a small business grant, something from the Center of Disease Control grant, a federal defense grant, they're very important sources. So let me go ahead one more time around this window, prioritize these for you, and then we'll have some discussion and questions. So your money, that's got to be there. I don't think you can expect to get going and have success if you don't put some of your money into this. The next one, high net worth individuals. If you can find that person, again, passionate about your space and believes in you, you're done. You can be done. That person can fund it, and I've seen it many times. Family offices, just to repeat, the hottest place to go. But it's difficult to be successful with them because family office might right now be in oil and gas. They might be buying multi-unit residential. Their focus tomorrow might be renewable energy. And sometimes the family office is focused and passionate about healthcare. So it's important to be able to differentiate what is that family office interested in. And then private equity funds like ours, built for one reason and one reason only. It's to fund projects like yours that score well. And then the strategics, a beautiful place to go. And it comes up in the next section as well, talking about development. We've done, when I was at Medtronic, we did 2 programs where we used Medtronic resources, Medtronic engineering, Medtronic labs, Medtronic equipment, and their money to develop the idea of the entrepreneur and ultimately brought it to market. And then grants we talked about just a moment ago. It's very easy to go find out if grants are available. Applying for them is a little bit of a chore writing them, but it's tried and true. We just got $2.6 million in a grant for one of our clients, and it wasn't really that hard. Fact is, now we got $2.6 million non-dilutive money. So I want to stop there, take questions, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how to be successful with each one of these.
Great, thanks for the overview. Since we had just a few people on, I think it would be useful for you folks to introduce yourself. Suji, could you tell us who you are and where you're coming from?
Sure. So first of all, Dr. Myers, thank you for hosting this. You don't know me, but I learned about you through LinkedIn. I am a project manager. I actually work for Boston Scientific, and I'm aware of BTG brand. But I'm here currently in my capacity as an entrepreneur, not representing Boston Scientific. I'm actually in the process of developing tools and techniques for the early stage entrepreneurs in the med device space. So right now I'm in the, I guess, the information gathering phase. I'm trying to understand what hurdles entrepreneurs run into and what my solution could look like. So that's the capacity I'm attending. Knowledge gathering, information gathering, absorbing everything you're saying.
Where are you located?
I'm located in Boston, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, to be more precise.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for joining us. Ernest?
Thank you.
Ernest, can you tell us a little bit about you? Okay,
Hello?
Ernest, can you? Yeah, Ernest, can you hear me?
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm a physician. I'm New York based. I'm in the hospital now. I'm sort of in a corridor because I'm interested in listening. I have several ideas in very early stages, so this information will be of inherent great importance.
Yeah. What kind of doc are you?
I'm trained in internal medicine and dermatology,
Great. And where are you located?
New York City.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Jordan,
Thank you.
do you want to tell us about you?
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Jordan Mickleby, and I know I've met Brian before. I'm Nashville based, and I'm a medical device engineer. Have built a couple startups now, and really just saw this pop up. I've been a part of SOAP and helping physicians move their ideas forward. So yeah, I'm just trying to join the movement, add where I can, and yeah, support SOAP. So
Great. Are you related to Perry?
yeah, I am. That's my dad.
Yeah. Okay, well, good. This is a second generation SOAP thing. Yeah, he and I have known each other forever, as I'm sure you know.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, well, it's good to see you. So let me just start off by asking a couple questions and then engage the group and see whether you have some questions. So my first question is, the list that you presented is, of course, useful, but it's always difficult to figure out how to get in touch with these folks, and particularly high net worth individuals, family offices, strategics. I mean, the cynical view is this is an insider's game, and it's who you know, not what you know. So in order to get the phone call or to get the contact or to have a conversation, and it's inside baseball. So for the average person, and I guess I would ask Sujit the same thing. If I want to get to Boston Scientific, how the heck do I do that? Or if I want to get to the person who runs, the Walmart Foundation, how do I do that? Brian?
Me? Okay. Well, first thing is this. Let's talk about, since you asked it of Sujit with Boston Scientific. First of all, it is an inside game to a large degree, but it doesn't mean you can't be successful if you're not an insider. Let me explain. If I right now call up and I go to Boston Scientific, even if I don't know them, I can go and find out on LinkedIn, who is it? Or I can call the company. I can call the front desk and say, I'm looking for somebody in Boston Scientific Ventures or Equity. And I've had no problem getting to, at a company level, who that is. And so
last decade, top 100 magazine.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Yep.
please mute your mic if you're not speaking.
My bad.
So when it's a company like that, I find them to be very receptive to at least hearing what you have and what you're working on. And I've had no problems not only getting conversations, but being able to meet with them, get on the phone, get on a Zoom before COVID, go and see them. And it's really just important that you don't give up. So there is no doubt that if I was calling somebody like my friend that runs venture for Kaiser, an IDN, if it's me calling, then I'm going to get there faster. But it doesn't mean because you don't have any connections that they won't, if you're persistent, take your call. And when you get on that call, you want to ask them, hey, you don't start talking about your device. You just ask them, how do you like to be approached with opportunities? What do you need to see? What is the process? Like, make it about them so that you cannot waste your time or theirs. So if we're talking about going to the strategics, their equity arm, that's not hard. Just don't give up. Do you want me to talk about another one?
Sure.
Okay, now let's flip to the other end of the scale. Knowing a high net worth person. So I'm thinking of a gentleman right now that got very, very successful, sold his company for just under $1 billion. I know that in their family, they have a certain disease state that they are passionate about. They want to make a difference in. So that's insider. You know a person like that? Pretty easy. Your question is, what if I don't know that person? Let me tell you what, unless you swim in that circle, unless you can find somebody who goes to the different meetings they go to, who read what they read, who participate in groups they participate in, unless you know someone in there, it's almost impossible. But you can get help. There are people that specialize in connecting high net worth with opportunities. The problem I've had with them is they want to charge you a monthly retainer with no guarantee of outcome, no list of who did they talk to and did they actually talk to anyone for you. So it's very risky, and I have not had good success using a finder for high net worth. That one, there's just no two ways around it. You got to network. So who do you know? They talk about 6 degrees of separation from you to anyone you want to get to. If you just start working your network and say, does anyone know anyone like this? That's about all you can do. There is no easy answer to that. An insider is very helpful. I want to go back to the finder. If you can find a true proven finder, then that's absolutely worth it. If you find a true proven finder, please let me know who that is.
All right. So another issue that you brought up is this whole finder thing. I mean, there are issues and regulations concerning finding private money. And the SEC is looking over your shoulder as to, because essentially the issue is it's interpreted as selling securities. And you can't sell securities without a securities license. Well, what does that mean? What is a security? What does it mean to, quote, sell a security? How does that work out? And, oh, by the way, the regulations are changing from state to state. So, for example, in California, the rules for being a finder are different than some other place where you may be in trouble if you're a finder. So how do you get around that?
Yeah, I would say here's the list. First of all, don't let somebody tell you that they've got the network, but they're not licensed. They're not a licensed broker, but they got an arrangement with someone who is licensed, and they'll work it out between themselves how they get paid. I don't do that. I don't go to any gray. So whatever state you're in, I would get, if you're going to use a finder, make sure, have them show you the credential that they are fully licensed. Don't play this. You're going to see it more often than you'll see the license. The licensed people are busy. The people that aren't licensed are going to use their network, like I say, and try to make some arrangement. I would not advise that.
Right.
So when you come to the finder, you have to be sure that they are licensed. And then you want to ask them, what is your process? And what visibility will I have to the progress you're making? So I'm just going to say that when venture capital largely stepped away from med device, and I'll explain why if we get that deep, everybody started to run over here to what we're doing now, right here, 2021, how we do it now. And they go, let's do finders. I can tell you that in the last 5-6 years, I've been with companies that probably used a finder maybe 7 or 8 times. And 7 of those were a complete abject failure. Oh, we made pitches, but nothing happened. I didn't know if I was pitching to their friend at the golf course. You know what I mean? You don't know. And their reputations are great. They're going to show you a list of who they know and what they've done. It's going to sound amazing. So for me, 7 of those were abject failures. We have one right now. This guy is a finder, and he spent almost 18 years as an analyst in Midtown Manhattan. This guy is the real deal. Like literally, he has a database of thousands of potential investors. And we went from no pitches to funding sources to 2 a week. So it's finding the real one. They have to be licensed and they have to prove to you what is their process and what visibility will you have. If you find out they're not licensed, I wouldn't do it. If they can't articulate a process, if it doesn't look and feel like a process, then I wouldn't do it. And number 3, if they won't share visibility every step of the way and have a weekly update call with you, I wouldn't do it. However, if those 3 things are true, it can make the difference between languishing, not being able to get funding, and getting started.
Yeah.
Dr. Myers.
Yeah,
sorry,
I was
go
going
on.
to ask you. I was going to ask you. So, what is the answer to the question when I call you or Boston Scientific and say, "How do you want to hear about ideas?"
So that's precisely what I wanted to maybe talk about just a little bit. So just to be very clear, I am not on the business side at Boston. I guess we all are involved with the business, but I'm on the endoscopy side as a project manager, right? However, to Brian's earlier comment, we absolutely do make, they call it strategic bets in small, startups, companies, which we think will be a logical fit to our portfolio. So we have 7 divisions. And so we'd make those bets. The way there are a couple of avenues. So obviously, what Brian said, calling the head office, corporate office, and trying to get in touch with the right individual, that would be one way. A second very good way, I think, personally, what I would do if I was an early stage entrepreneur is attend the events in which Boston Scientific is a co-sponsor. So what are those? In Massachusetts, there is a M2D2 that is held. That's at UMass Lowell. So it happens at UMass Lowell, where Boston Scientific representatives are often present, and anyone who's there is going to be on the vice president, senior director level, so someone with decision-making ability. In Minnesota, there is I forget the name, but it's another of those startup incubators where Boston Scientific is a presence, either as a judge or as a sponsor. And so if you can get there, you have the right people at least to start your conversation. Apart from that, I think Boston Scientific also holds open innovation contests. And so I'll try to look it up on LinkedIn, and Dr. Myers, I can send it to you offline, but we host open innovation contests where you can submit your idea, and obviously it goes to the right set of people, again, at a pretty high level to see if is this a good fit for us? Is this something we want to invest in? So those would be like the 2 or 3 opportunities apart from picking up the phone and I guess calling.
Right. Well, if Boston Scientific is interested in working with me or SOAP to promote those opportunities, I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation to do it.
Yeah, let's talk. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. The other comments I would make are, you say, well, you got to put skin in the game. You got to we're talking about on average 5 years and $30 million to get an idea to market. Now, Brian has presented a timeline that's abbreviated because of a number of reasons that you can review on the first video. But let's say, okay, it's not $30 million in 5 years, it's $10 million in a year and a half. But the point is, it's, relative a year and a half, and it's a significant amount of money. So my point or question is, I'm an engineer. I just invented something and I think it has legs, and I have a day job and I really can't afford to go to my spouse and say, hey, how about if we mortgage the house and take money out of our pension plan and use credit card debt and all the other stuff that people who start businesses do, not in healthcare, but that's the large majority of funding from people who start retail businesses, credit cards. So how do you do that, Brian? Okay, it's a good idea. You're going to put skin in the game, but $1,000 isn't going to get you there.
I would use the money to do the scoring and vetting and see if you should even go forward with the idea. I would not use the money to build a prototype and hire a regulatory consultant and start that path. I would first want to find out, and we're not talking about a lot. I would say the minimum that I would want to see someone has in of their own cash is 10,000. Better, especially for doctors, around 50. Why is that? because that's how much it will take to learn, truly learn the market, truly learn what is the commercial value of your idea, truly get an idea of the regulatory path and timeline. So I would start there. It's not a bunch of money, but here's what it is. What it also is it shows that you're not just doing this for a hobby. Somebody that you're really going to attract to invest significant money, they have to know that this is something you're not going to give up on, even though you had a bad day.
So there's always this question of how do I do this and not quit my day job? And you just alluded to this, particularly for the doctors or doctor on this call. The question is, on the one hand, I'm a practicing physician. I have obligations. I have responsibilities. I'm making a certain amount of money, but I really want to get into this physician entrepreneurship gig. On the one hand, as we've just discussed and you've just said, people want to know that you are committed to this and that you're not dabbling and this is just not on a whim and you're taking this seriously. So how do you bridge that conflict? On the one hand, I can't quit or I don't want to quit my day job, but at the other hand, I want to get started in this, but I can't be all in right now.
Yeah, here's how you can do it. First of all, we have one person in our group, vascular surgeon, practiced for 28 years and has done what you're describing, practiced while doing startups together. And then now after 20 years of practice is going to focus just on startups. So let's say that you go back to your person there. What I see is this. You can bring in somebody who's done this before and been successful, and you can make them your partner. You can make them your CEO, whatever it is. And if that person has the means, you might be able to get them just for equity. And so the point is you need somebody to help you because you don't know what you don't know and you don't have the time. So you need help. The question is, how do you get that help? So I've seen it where somebody comes in to run it just for equity. I've seen it where someone comes in to run it for cash and equity. I've seen it where you just outsource it, topic of the next 30 minutes, where you go to someone and you do it fractionally. So it's absolutely possible. It's absolutely possible. The biggest mistake I see is that somebody, knowing what you had to know to get your MD, do your internship, do a fellowship, the amount of knowledge you have is so deep, and you're obviously highly intelligent. We're not talking about intelligence here. You need help because you don't know how this all works and you don't have time. So bring somebody in on your team or hire somebody as a consultant or hire somebody fractional through an incubator.
Okay, great. Well, let's move on to the next section.
Okay, before we do, I know we're going into the next section of development, but I wanted to pick up one more thing here that Sujit said, and it relates also to the family office. So what you can do, and I've seen it, and I want to comment on this, and I am not trying to put anything down. It can all work, but I do want to make one caution. So we've gone to family office summits, family office pitch meetings. We just did one that cost $10,000. And we pitched to, I think, 12 family offices over 3 days. It was like the speed dating. So we paid that money to do it. And you get to come on with a family office person. And hopefully you're not talking to someone who's at the summit as a family office for oil and gas if you're in medical. But I've seen that happen. I've also seen this, what you say, go to these competitions, and maybe Boston's there or Medtronic or somebody. And you know what? We've paid money to go to those. And then you try to put in your information, and then you're supposed to try to get like set up with meetings. And the people you really want to talk to, they're booked. You never got to talk to them. Maybe you saw them because they had their badge on when they walked down the aisle. But I just don't find it effective. I think it's expensive, and I think it's kind of a fake feel good. But what I like better is, like in the case of going to a company like that, I would call them. If you know someone who knows them, that's amazing. You know what the third way is? Find out who's a busy doctor, who uses a lot of Medtronics, whatever, or Boston Scientifics, whatever. Trust me, if they're busy with that product, that company is going to take your call if that doctor will refer you. So I just wanted to caution that these summits and these contests and everything, I haven't seen them as effective. I've been mostly disappointed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and to Suji, it's my observation that this is not just medtech. It's hard for doctors. Now, I appreciate the ideas, and certainly they're good ones, but in general, most doctors have the impression that it's extremely difficult to talk to and get the ear of medtech big tech, big pharma. I mean, you just can't call up Apple or Google or Facebook or AstraZeneca or Novartis. I mean, there's a wall, and part of our mission is to break down that wall. So anyway, let's move on to the next part.
Okay, I really want to move on, but I have to just pick up that last thread, Dr. Mars. I hope you don't mind. Here's the thing. When I'm sitting there as the business development person, or when I'm sitting there at an equity place, what do they want? They're sitting there hungry for good ideas, good investments. So I never get like down or feel nervous to do it, because I always take the impression that I'm bringing them something that could be awesome, and they want it. So you just got to be tenacious. Hope you didn't mind that extra couple of words.
Good.
Okay, so now we're going to go to part 4. Whenever you scored out your project to decide, yes, you should go, or no, you shouldn't, that is also going to point me towards a certain funding. And it's going to point me also towards how I want to develop it. So let's get into this. I think of it as a development spectrum. You have choices. So how does a full-time doctor get their funding and then develop their project and keep their day job? Well, you have choices. One of them on the funding was to get help. Here's the choices for development. First one, if you score high enough, either the current scores, there's 217 of them, either the current scores are so high that you're ready to go, or the scores can be made very high. And I mean high. This is talking about your fundability, your exitability, your commercial value, your clinical value, regulatory path. When that stuff scores high, you will probably be able to raise the money to go bricks and mortar. So bricks and mortar is the most expensive, this model that I'm calling bricks and mortar. It's the most expensive, but you have the most control. And it also shows investors that you're real, like you are going for it. So when you have bricks and mortar, you rent the space, you hire full-time people. So Dr. Myers, I'm a doctor here, it's my idea. I start this up, I get a CEO, I get a COO, I get a vice president of engineering. You know, you hire the people. You acquire or rent the equipment. So that's one option. And that's the way we used to do all of them way back in the day. So it's one option. It's on one end of the spectrum. Here's the next option. There are entities out there now that are what I would call a full service incubator. So here's the option. They can do everything from sketch out your idea, build the first prototypes, test them to get through the feasibility stage, put them into a quality system that will be a help, not a hurt, when the strategic is evaluating should they buy you. Do the full regulatory path, pre-submission, submission, and manufacture it all in one place. So that's a full service incubator. And one example of that would be like Nagelreiter Medical Device Development in Florida. You literally can go in there with an idea that you can put on a napkin or a whiteboard, and they will do every step of the way. The thing that's different about the bricks and mortar is you're not hiring the people full time. That excellent regulatory person you need when you need them, you don't have to have a full-time person. It's fractional. You pay for what you need. That engineering staff to take it all the way through design, feasibility, validation, and verification, fractional. So a full service incubator is the next most control, but has a cost break and a time break to doing the bricks and mortar. So this is an option. Here's another option. We're moving down the spectrum. You can do a partial incubator. Maybe what you did is you got somebody to partner up with you, say you're a physician, and they engineered it. So maybe they have a little design shop and they started to engineer it. Maybe they even built a prototype somewhere. So you have the gist of what you're going to do. You can feel it, touch it, explain it. You have an idea if it works. And then you can do a partial incubator where they take over the quality, the regulatory, and they can manufacture it. Also fractional. So it's just another kind of part or option on the spectrum. You could do full contracting, just sub it out. So when people do that, they hire an engineer by the hour or a project fee, and they do the engineering part. Then they sub it out to a quality person to stick it in a quality system to keep the design history file and all that. Then they bring in another consultant who's regulatory, and then they'll find a manufacturing shop to give them the whole package. So this is another way you could do it. This last way is you could do it with a strategic. So if you did go to that strategic, and I'll give you an example, it's probably okay to talk about because it was 2005. So we're at Medtronic. Somebody's got an idea. Medtronic liked it, invested in it, and built it within Medtronic with right of refusal to purchase it if it went well. So this way is beautiful because you have funding, you have a potential buyer, and you have the resources and expertise of the large strategic. So when you do the scoring, to me, it gives you the roadmap and it points me which way should I go. Really high scores over here, I'll do bricks and mortar still. But I have to be really sure that I can raise the money and that I can get a good exit. But the scoring tells you if that's true or not. What I've been doing most recently is the full service incubator. Fractional, it's so much less expensive. Think about that. If I have a full-time regulatory, are they in a startup busy all day, every day? Or is their workload as a regulatory person going to be peaks and valleys? Well, it's going to be peaks and valleys. So I like the idea of fractional. And then that partial incubator just depends how far along you are. Maybe you already spent a bunch of money and you have that prototype. Partial incubation can work. Contracting it all out, this is what I see the most of today. Not what I do the most of, but what I see the most of. And here's the problem. If you do have a full-time job, whether you're an engineer someplace or you're a doctor someplace, it is very difficult to manage all these contractors and keep execution happening on pace because there's so many moving parts. It's just difficult. Really nice is also that with the strategic. So when you score it, you end up saying, okay, how certain are we that we can raise this money? How certain are we that we'll have a good exit? And then I'll be able to pick, here's how much money, here's how much time, here's where my idea stands, still in my head, or I've got a prototype that I proved in an animal. Wherever you are, then you pick which of these along the spectrum matches your money, your speed, the time you can put into it versus have help, etc. It kind of points the way to one of these options. But to me, that's your choices, those 5. We'll take it off screen share and discuss.
That's great. So essentially, it's a build or buy model, and you have various levels of outsourcing versus build it yourself, depending on the outcome of your scoring system. And I think that's a good rubric. The question comes up sometimes. So Jordan or Ernest, do you want to comment on what you just heard?
This is Ernest. I find it very informative. This type of a structure, I think, gives me a sense of options and latitude to make important judgment calls. I just wanted to ask if there are any, there's a list of, I know one, the name of one full service incubator was mentioned. Are there others, or and in
Yeah.
the partial space, are there others that you would recommend?
Oh yeah, I'll send to Arlen a list of, you could Google it yourself, medtech or med device incubators or developers, but I'll send you a list. I'll bet you there's 80 or 90 that are on that list. So they're easy to find. You ask the most important question, Ernest, who would you recommend? Here's my take. When you have a shop like this, they have people, engineers, quality, regulatory, accounting, they have people that are experts in usually one space, one part of the space. No one's an expert, has spent a career in all of it. And some incubators will say, well, it doesn't matter what your project is, if it's orthopedics, if it's ENT, if it's plastics, if it's coronary, doesn't matter. I think it matters. For me, I want to look at who do they have in their organization and what is their background. So you'll find one incubator totally specialized in maybe neurocatheters. Another one might be totally specialized in joint replacement. So how you find the best one is A, what do they specialize in? Not that they tell you they can do it all. I get why they say that. They're not lying to you. I'm saying my litmus test is tell me where your engineers have spent the last 15, 20 years. And if it's not in my space that I'm bringing my project for, I'm probably not choosing them. So that'd be one. The other way to know for sure is have them show you the quality system. Show you what they use for the quality system, how they run it, how rigorous they are to it. That is a critical differentiator amongst incubators. And so I think it's important to do your homework on that. But if you find out that their background is in specialty that matches yours, and if you're totally impressed with the quality system, you're probably on your way to a good relationship. If you don't know how to evaluate a quality system, maybe that could be another section, or contact me and I'll show you what I mean. Don't blow it off though, because quality system is like, oh, quality system. Here's how important it is. I've seen companies acquired and not acquired. The deciding point was, how good is the quality system? And there's a bunch of reasons for that, but that's what I would say. So I'll give Arlen the list. There's probably way more than 80, but in my travels, I try to always make at least one side trip to visit a new incubator. What's their specialty? What's their background? What have their wins been? I don't need someone that's good at making stuff that never goes anywhere. And then what's that quality system?
Thank you. Actually, my subsequent question was going to be on how do you, your metric or how do you critique a good quality system? But that I think should be subject for something, because it is of great importance. I just have one last question.
Sure.
Insofar as strategics go, would you also be able to provide some guidance in terms of selection in that arena?
Well, I think so. And there's a few ways that I would do it. So if this is too much of a sidebar, Dr. Myers, call me off. But to try to answer it succinctly, I would say this. Let's just take the space of peripheral vascular. So we're going to try to, fix fistulas, fix vascular anomalies, open blood flow in legs to heal non-healing wounds. Let's just say we're going to use that as an example. Well, when you look at that strategic landscape, there's a few different players there. You have two companies whose philosophy, Boston Scientific and Medtronic, is be broad, offer everything that specialty needs. And they do that so they can get bundling opportunities with IDNs. They can have that doctor relationship. Hey, you don't just use us for part of the case. We have everything you need. So it's broad. It's a strategy. Then you've got other people. One example might be cardiovascular systems. Cardiovascular Systems, Inc. does one thing and one thing only: treat calcified plaque. So they're not broad. They don't offer everything, but they're really good at this one piece. So you have to look at your device and then assess, is this going to be appetite because it fills somebody's white space on their broad portfolio? Or do you look at it and say, boy, they're in this space, they serve my call point, but they're missing a really important tool. I think I have that tool. So what's very easy to do is to get some syndicated data, see who's got what market share, what's their offering, and then you can pretty well tell where would be your most likely place to go. How do you think of it? You think of it like this. If you were sitting there as the president of this particular division of a big company, or the CEO, or somebody that runs one of the divisions, put yourself in their shoes and say, is my product going to be accretive to that company? Will it lift their brand, lift their reputation, and make use of the sales force they already paid for? These are some of the things you think of when you pick your target.
Thank you.
If
Thank
you
you very
haven't,
much.
yeah, if we're getting some noise in the background, if you're not speaking, please mute your mic. I'm not sure who that's coming from, but Sujit, do you have any comments about what just Brian just said?
Yeah, sorry, I I was off mute there for a little bit. I just wanted to wholeheartedly second what Brian said about quality systems. If you cannot show, if you're looking for an exit and you cannot show systematic traceability, to your bills, to your protocols, to, let's say, your marketing specification, to your product specification, to any testing you have done, to sample sizes. Now, the sample sizes may not be to a big corporation's expectations, but you at least need to show them, hey, these are the 5 and these are the values I got. Like, paperwork is as important and as critical as the actual work itself is what I would say. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you better have enough to show a systematic thought process and systematic data, systematic traceability, because otherwise the company is basically taking your word for it. And to Brian's point, they might love the idea, they might love the device, but they might say, hey, the risk is too high. We really don't have any strong confidence in the test data, or you've not shown us anything for us to feel good about this,
Right? It's well said.
No, I look so sad.
Somebody is, could you please mute your mic?
I think that's Dr. Ernest in the
Ernest, can
corridor.
you
No,
mute your, yeah,
There we go.
okay, or whatever.
Yeah, I have a quick comment. At what point, Brian, do you think a quality system is required as far as the development cycle goes? I've always operated under the assumption of you don't want to thwart progress because of a quality system and slowing down advancement and prototyping and really hampering yourself with standard operating procedures when things are moving so fluidly that don't really need to be quote unquote traced. And I know it's very taboo to say, but
No,
anyway,
it's real. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just this early stage innovation, it can be thwarted by quality and overburdened quality systems. So I was just curious what your take on that is.
Well, I think it is a controversial question. I will tell you that I've done it where I didn't bring it in till later, the quality system. I've done it where I brought it in up front, and there were times where I felt like we're wasting all this time documenting this, marketing spec, feasibility design plan. Like, why are we doing all this if it's not going to go anywhere? So I wouldn't do it the first time I had my idea up on a whiteboard. But if I'm starting to make any type of a prototype, I'm starting it right then and there for a bunch of reasons. One, I want to make sure that we're all in the discipline, whoever I'm working with, of we run a quality system. I want to get that discipline and that mentality early. Number two, you'll lose things and iterations, even of prototypes, if you don't have a quality system to go back on. So I used to be a little bit like, we'll do it when we need it. Today, 2021, April, I start it right away, but that's me. What do you guys think?
I think that that question also applies to your company. So the question also is asked, well, I'm gonna, so I have this idea, or I have a problem I want to solve, and I want to kind of go down this road. And then the next question is, so what corporate entity do you create? Is it an LLC? Is it an S Corp? Is it a C Corp? And that's another side conversation. But let's assume you just create an LLC for the time being. You can convert it to a C Corp in Delaware as a typical example. Well, then the question becomes, okay, now I have articles of incorporation and maybe an operating agreement as an LLC, and I want to put together an org chart. And the org chart looks like me, and me when it comes to the picture in the box, VP of engineering, COO, CEO, you're the chief cook and bottle washer. And the mistake is that you don't think in terms of a quote, real company. In other words, you need to have systems envisioned and eventually put people in that box other than you. So you want to exit essentially from working in the company to working on the company. And that means, as was alluded to before, you're going to need a VP for marketing and engineering and operations and finance and all the pieces. But to this point, well, how soon do I need to have HR policy and procedures envisioned in a startup? As soon as possible. And what about finance? Well, you're going to start off with a bookkeeper, and maybe you get to a controller, and eventually you may get to a CFO. But the point is, it's a mindset. You want to think in terms of a real, unquote, company that has, you're thinking at least about product, marketing, finance, systems. And you don't necessarily fill in the boxes with people because they're expensive and you're not ready to hire them. But at least you should have that mindset so people are beginning to think about it. And so it's the same thing with, in my view, with quality. I mean, you at least need to start thinking about, well, what boxes do we need to check off and when is it appropriate to do it? Early versus late, how much money do you have? But at the end of the day, if you don't pass the sniff test and have all this stuff lined up in a data room, you're not going to, I mean, people are going to want to do due diligence and see what you did.
Yeah.
And how far back does it go? This also applies incidentally to intellectual property. If you don't start keeping track of intellectual property when it comes time to do the IP audit, when it's starting to do due diligence, if you don't have this stuff written down and tracked, who owns what sub-licensor did what about copyrights, what about trade secrets, all that stuff, it just makes your life harder. And it's much harder to go back and recreate all this than to just keep it on track and monitor it as you move forward. So my suggestion is think like a real company. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend all this money to hire all these people and put their faces in the org chart.
Yeah.
It means have that mindset so that when it's time, you have a track record of what the company has done. Worst case, you've spent some hours following this stuff. Best case, you have it all when you're ready for prime time.
Totally agree. You know, one more thing to add to it. I'm going to add to what you said. Everything you said, and doing these disciplines, keep track of things, even a marketing plan, you'll end up with a better chance of success, because even though it might feel like more work, do I really need to do it now? Always something good comes out of that effort. None of it's wasted. It just doesn't always make sense that it's going to be valuable right now. But doing what you just said to me, you'll end up with a better development, a better outcome just by doing it that way.
Right. And another thing I've seen is when you're a startup and you are looking for talent, there's always this issue of, do you hire the ex-CEO, retired ex-CEO of Boston Scientific to be the head of your startup, or somebody different? Well, again, that's a whole nother conversation. The good news is they come out of it with a corporate mentality. Like, what's this going to look like when you list it in an IPO or as a SPAC? The bad news is they're going to list it as a big league company from the get-go. And if you ask them to change the paper in the copy machine, you're going to get like a funny look. So there's the good, like where's my executive assistant to do this or that? I mean, that's not startup land. That's IPO, NASDAQ land. So there are pros and cons to doing stuff. Do you want folks like that on your board of directors? Probably, but do you really want them running a company? I don't think so at a startup level, but that's just my own personal experience. I just want to quickly get to one more point, and that is everything we've been talking about is a physician as founder or as the entrepreneur. There are many doctors that don't want to be the founder. They just simply want to be in the game. They want to be a medical advisor. They want to be a chief medical officer, whatever, a side gig or side hustle, or they want to give up their practice and do it entirely. So Sujit and Brian, final comment. What is your advice to people that want to do that?
I think I'll come from an engineer's perspective because I'm an engineer. It's clear that the physician entrepreneur has found a problem. He's found a clinical issue, and they have figured out a better way to, do a certain procedure X. And I would almost think it's a good idea for them not to be involved at a founder level. They can stay one level higher. However, in that case, I would say you would need a chief engineering officer, or you need a technical partner because once you've identified a problem and you have a device that you believe is going to solve the problem, the rest of the work is engineering work, right? Of course, you continue to get more knowledge of the, say the disease state or the device, how it helps tackle that disease state. But the most of the work from that point on is engineering. So you need some sort of a business representative, and you need an engineering representative. Within the engineering team can sit the quality systems, probably even the regulatory, and on the business side will be the marketing, reimbursement, health economics, all those aspects. So you need those three together, right? There's a clinical need, there's the engineering development, and there's the whole customer facing business aspect of things where you have to build out your sales team. And so I would say you need those three people, at least at a very high level, fundamentally aligned and working together and building the teams below that.
Yeah, I would add one more. I tell people when you're building a startup team, you're essentially going to need a problem seeker, a problem solver, a business builder, and a money finder. And it's
Yeah,
very,
that's a
and,
good, yeah.
and I would add a storyteller, sales and marketing. So, and it's very unusual for one person to be able to do all of that. I would say it's impossible. So you have to pick this, fill the right skill positions with the right people at the right time. And if you don't have, because it's a full contact sport, it's a team sport. You can't do this yourself.
Yep.
Solopreneurship is not going to work in medtech.
No.
So you have to have a team that can execute. So that's my final point. Well, unfortunately, we ran out of time. This was a great presentation. I really appreciate the input of the viewers and our guest, Brian. And if you're interested in seeing, if you want to see this again, subscribe to the SOAP video channel. Join us at soapnet.org. And our final presentation will be same time, same station next week. And we'll follow this journey along and help you get your medtech idea to patients. So Brian, thanks again. We'll see you next week.
Thanks,
Sujit,
everybody.
stay in touch and let us know
Yep.
if we can collaborate.
Absolutely.
And thanks very much, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Okay. I'll add all of you on my LinkedIn if that's okay. I think that's